They're looking for a ban on unjust, unfair evictions. None of that introduced by the government. And with today there's an affordable housing bill, supposedly affordable housing, but the government are talking about affordable housing in areas like Dublin Bay South at €450,000. I mean, who can afford that? And we're also dealing with the Land Development Agency, this new brainchild of the government, which is in effect the handing over of the entire public land bank, which should be used for public and genuinely affordable housing, to market forces, to private financiers, to vulture funds. So it's a disaster. So our policy is trying to spell out what the alternative is. We need masses of public and genuinely affordable housing. We need rent controls. We need protections for tenants. And instead of privatising the public land bank, we should be taking the private land bank that's being held by the speculators and the hoarders back into public ownership, so we can deliver more public and affordable housing. But Brigid might say how all these issues are playing out. I would imagine they're huge. The rental issues, the unaffordable house prices. What do you think?
Well, I've had a lot of constituents. When I'm knocking on doors, I get a lot of constituents. Their number one issue is is housing. You get an awful lot of people being like, my son's 27 and he can't move out and I need him gone. And like, I empathise with that. And you get a lot of younger people being like, I'm still living with my mum. I thought I was an adult. And it's this feeling of like real like desperation, and just this feeling of like arrested development, not being able to like move on with your life because you're still living in the family home. You're still in your box bedroom and you're sharing it with your brother and sister, and you're like, oh my God, when does this end? And there's a big feeling of desperation and just needing to escape, and they can't because rents are so insane at the moment. And we're looking at an 8% increase over for a possible 8% increase now that what's it called?
That the emergency measures to stop rent increases have now been lifted.
So 8% increase. For most people, that means €140 added onto their rent, which is already too much. It's all like the rent is already extortionate. We need to start introducing serious rent controls. A ban on evictions, like Richard said. No fault evictions need to go. This idea of a renoviction where the landlord says that you need to leave because they're renovating the gaff, and then you pop by and you see no work has been done, they just evicted you for no reason. That needs to go. The sector is just, it's insane, and it means that people are going to emigrate. That's what's going to happen, and we can't lose another generation to Australia and Canada or America. It's oh God.
And you're of course faced with this, Brigid, as a young person, and you're working. I could only imagine that your wages go nowhere near trying to be able to pay the rents that are being charged in Dublin Bay South, or being able to buy a house. And I presume you're meeting lots of people of that sort. And one thing actually just to mention, you might comment on that, but it is also the Pool Beg development, the old Irish glass bottle site. There's we could build, and there's due to be built, thousands of
3,600 homes.
Yeah, but how many of them will actually be affordable and public houses, or will, because there's private money involved, are they going to be completely out of the reach? The majority of them, it just shows you we could solve the crisis, but the government's policies just won't achieve the solutions we need.
Oh God, and there's been so little movement with the Irish glass bottle site. It's been stagnating for so long, and now there's talks of like 25% social and affordable housing. It needs to be 100% social and affordable housing. Again, affordable housing seems to be €450,000. That's not affordable. So if that's the benchmark for affordable housing, that means that 25% of those houses are going to be up to that price. That's not achievable for ordinary people, and
you need to get at €450,000 for a so-called affordable house. You would need to have annual earnings of €120,000 a year and a deposit.
Yeah,
I mean it's just insane.
Yeah.
I'd say there's about 10% of the population could afford that.
Yeah,
and 90% of people are being just completely priced out of the whole housing situation.
Yeah. It's like I said earlier. It's just going to mean mass immigration, or it's going to mean there's a generation of homeless people. There's going to be a generation that are made homeless because once they hit the age of retirement, they're not going to be able to afford the rent anymore, which to me is very scary. That's a lot of people, and it's good. And it's not just young people that are getting affected by this. It's anybody who hasn't had the opportunity to buy a house. They're going to be affected by this, and there's no supports for them at the moment. If you've had a marriage that broke up and now you're renting, you could be in your 50s and see or your 50s or 60s and see that you're going to be retiring soon, and there's no support for you because you're renting. And how are you going to be able to continue paying that once you're retired? And there's no contingency plan. So what are those people supposed to do?
Well, I think it's, certainly my view, I'm sure you probably agree, but it's the two major parties, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and the parties that are willing to prop them up, are just not, they don't seem to care about the ordinary working people or the young people. They're just looking after the interests of the investment funds, of the private property developers, of the banks who finance all of this craziness, of the property speculators. And it's about time we had representation, not just in Dublin Bay South, but across the country, that's going to stand up for ordinary working people and for the young generation like yourselves.
No, there needs to be serious reform with how we treat renters. It's just, even with the RTB, state of the RTB, it's supposed to be a safety net for people, and it does not function as a safety net for renters. It benefits landlords almost all the time. If you've ever had to talk to anybody who's dealt with the RTB, they'll tell you themselves it's useless. If the amount of people that I've had talk to me about the RTB and tell me that the RTB's solution was to contact Threshold, which is a charity, and the charity has to fill the gaps that the RTB overlooks, and those gaps are massive, and it's that's like getting your deposit back. That's like unfair rent increases. If you're a licensee, that's somebody who's subletting, or somebody who's living in a home occupied by the landlord, you have almost no rights. Regular tenants have very few rights, and then licensees have even fewer. You're kind of held at the whims of the landlord, and that's just not good enough anymore when you have such a huge. I think Dublin Bay South has more than 40% of the population of Dublin Bay South are renting. That's more than 40% have absolutely no representation in the Dáil, and they're fighting an uphill battle, and they're going to be looking at more evictions and the 8% increase on their rent, €140 in Dublin Bay South. That. On top of already some of the highest rents in the country, I just can't get. That's the one I can't get over. They're just going to tag on €140 at the end of the day. That one is insane.
Well, I think that the thing maybe to finish up is what we've got to do about all this, and what we're saying in this new housing policy document is obviously we need a massive programme of public and affordable house building on public land. We need to stop the sell-off of public land. Empty property or sites that could be used for public housing should be taken off these speculators and used for public housing. And then we need rent control, genuine rent controls, and we need to stop the no-fault evictions. But in order to achieve that, we need people power. That 40% in Dublin Bay South, all that generation of people who are caught in this rental trap or are priced out of the market, we need them on the streets. And Brigid, myself, are involved with the National Housing and Homelessness Coalition, and it's going to, like with the water charges, we need people out on the streets. That's the only way we are going to resolve this problem. We need masses of people affected by the housing crisis getting out marching, and as well as just looking for votes. I think that's the thing we should really be saying on the doorstep is get out and fight. It's
fighting to get housing is. Of course, I want you to vote for me. But ultimately, the most important thing is to get out there, and to make sure that you're heard, and to not put up with this anymore. We can't just take this lying down anymore. We're constantly getting increased rent. We need we need to start hitting the streets and demanding. We're not demanding real rent controls. We need to demand more public and affordable housing. We need to demand a state-run construction company that does all that. Builds the houses. It's good jobs. It'll be good jobs for the workers, and it'll mean that there's actually genuinely affordable housing. And we need to demand that the 200,000 empty homes that are in this country get filled. How is there 2,000 empty homes and 200,000 empty homes, and we have a homelessness epidemic? It makes no sense. We have the answers there. We just need to do it.
Yeah, well, listen, Brigid, over the next couple of weeks, I really hope the campaign goes well. I'll be out canvassing as I have been over the last few days, and I just appeal to people out there, vote for Brigid. She's a renter, she's a young person, she's someone who's got a stake in solving these problems, so she's not just going to talk about it. And win or lose, we're going to build this movement, because we have to. We can't deal with this crisis persisting, so please vote for people for profit Brigid Purcell in the Dublin Bay South by-election. Get involved with our campaign and help us build the movement of resistance for change, for the public and affordable housing, and for the security for tenants and the decent